most of all, to serve those who have the least, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 16 September 2025 and Tuesday, 28 October 2025 to be confirmed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
Second. The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 4th November 2025 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the aforesaid minute be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honour, the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President.
I'm in receipt of a message from the President dated 5th November 2025. Dear Mr. Speaker, I wish to inform that I shall be away from the island on Thursday, 6th November 2025 on vacation leave. In accordance with the provisions of Section 33 of the Constitution, the Very Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Douglas Gibson will perform the functions of the Office of President during my absence. As the Honourable House of Assembly will not be meeting prior to my departure, it will not be possible for the usual formal message to be sent to your chamber. Will you therefore please bring my absence formally to the attention of the Honourable House of Assembly when next it meets? Yours faithfully, signed, President.
Petitions and papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am commanded to lay loan agreement number 2854, Urban Renewal Project in the Water, Housing and Infrastructure Sector, Phase 1, between the Saudi Fund for Development and the Government of Barbados. I'm also commanded to lay the duties, taxes, and other payments exemption, Sanitation Service Authority number 2, Order 2025, as well as the duties, taxes, and other payments exemption, Atiba Aluko, Order 2025.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Companies Economic Substance Repeal Bill 2025. Also move the first reading of the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2025, the Constitution Amendment Bill 2025, the Parliament Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2025, the Final Appropriations Bill 2022 to 23, Bill 2025, the Final Appropriations Bill 2023-2024, and the Final Appropriations Bill 2024 to 25, Bill 2025. I also beg to move the first reading of the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment Bill 2025. Sir?
Question is that the aforementioned bills be read a first time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers.
Honorable for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Finance Management Act 2019 requires us to present a mid-year review that compares actual performance with the approved fiscal framework and sets out any revisions to the full year outlook. The report before this Honourable Chamber covers April to September 2025, presents the revised framework to March 2026, and identifies the main risk and actions for the second half of the fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, the international backdrop is still uneven. Global growth remains moderate, but inflation pressures have eased, and travel demand has remained supportive. Against that backdrop, Barbados continued to expand in the first half of 2025, driven by tourism, construction, business, and other services. Unemployment eased to a historic low of 6.1%. Inflation moderated, and international reserves remain at historically strong levels. These conditions supported fiscal performance. Administrative improvements at the Revenue Authority, combined with robust domestic activity, resulted in stronger than expected revenue outturn at mid-year. At the same time, expenditure execution remained broadly manageable relative to program objectives. Mr. Speaker, I turn first to revenue. Total revenue for April to September 2025 amounted to $2,163.09 million, compared with a target of $1,790.02 million. The composition is broad-based, with notable strength in income and profits, and a positive result in goods and services. Income and profits collection total $933.74 million against a target of $517.6 million. Within that, net corporation tax reached $639.45 million, compared with the target of $229.1 million, reflecting prepayments and settlements by some taxpayers, including in-scope multinational groups. Net income tax was $274.85 million, compared to $265.9 million, and withholding tax was $19.41 million, compared to $22.56 million. Mr. Speaker, goods and services revenue amounted to $111.05 million, above the target by $15.56 million. The main movements were value-added tax, which overperformed by $19.82 million, $576.33 million versus $556.51 million. Excise, which underperformed by $12.36 million, $107.91 million versus the target of $120.25 million. And other goods and services, which exceeded target by $9.44 million, $48.62 million collected versus $39.18 million as the target. Property revenue was $170.27 million, $19.13 million below the target of $189.36 million. International trade taxes were $122.21 million, $17.05 million below the $139.26 million target, and non-tax revenue was $83.11 million, $17.26 million below the $100.37 million target. Special receipts were $34.25 million, $4.95 million below target, and stamp duties were $8.46 million, $290,000 below the target. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure for the first half of the fiscal year was $1,910.42 million, $69.35 million above the target of $1,841.07 million. The large divergence were current transfers at $586.56 million, $84.48 million above target, and capital expenditure at $266.07 million, $69.89 million above target. These were partially offset by interest at $276.43 million, some $85.65 million below target. Wages and salaries were $405.8 million, $6.63 million below target, and goods and services were $333.79 million, $5.60 million above target. The fiscal balance recorded a surplus of $250.67 million, approximately 1.65% of GDP, compared to a projected mid-year deficit of $51.04 million. The primary surplus was $529.1 million, approximately 3.47% of GDP, compared to a projected $311.04 million. The outturns are explained by stronger than expected revenues, led by corporation tax and value-added tax, with wages and salaries tracking closely to plan. Lower than expected interest was observed in the first half, while transfers were higher and capital payments were front-loaded. Mr. Speaker, the revised framework for March 2026 projects total revenue of $3,864.51 million, and total expenditure of $3,905.73 million, implying an overall deficit of $41.22 million, around 0.27% of GDP. The revised primary surplus is $676.80 million, equivalent to approximately 4.44% of GDP. To deliver the revised framework, we have resequenced the capital program to match confirmed procurement timelines, tighten in-year transfer controls to public entities, and maintain cash and arrears monitoring on a rolling cycle so that payments remain orderly through the fourth quarter. Mr. Speaker, on public debt and financing, debt service in the first half reflects a liability management operation that prepaid portions of our obligations to the International Monetary Fund under the Extended Fund Facility and partially addressed the 2029 International Eurobond. Interest outlays were contained relative to the target. The residual financing need for the second half is modest and is expected to be met from policy deposits, domestic market activities, and if required, the overdraft facility. Mr. Speaker, the objective remains clear. We will maintain a strong primary surplus, safeguard and prioritize social and investment spending, and keep debt on a sustainable path. The revised balances are consistent with that objective. Mr. Speaker, there are positives to highlight. Revenues are running above target. VAT refunds are above target. Wages and salaries are on plan. Interest payments are tracking below the original target. International reserves remain strong, providing confidence in external financing conditions. However, there are also headwinds to manage. Transfers to public entities are above target and must be held within the revised ceiling. Capital execution needs closer oversight to meet delivery schedules in the second half. International trade taxes and selected non-tax heads are below target and will require continued focus on compliance and collections. External risks include a softer global demand, fluctuations in commodity prices, and weather-related shocks. Mr. Speaker, on state-owned enterprises, arrears at the end of August stood at $75 million. The TMU monitored arrears were $32.3 million against a ceiling of $25 million. Tax administration reforms at the Barbados Revenue Authority continue to support performance with targeted enforcement, on-time processing of VAT payments, and sector-focused compliant work maintained through the first half. These measures are expected to deliver further gains in the second half by maintaining high filing and payment compliance, reducing age arrears, and sustaining stable net VAT collections while refunds remain current. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to mention that the government will authorize a targeted application of up to $9.9 million from the sewage levy to reduce arrears at the Barbados Water Authority. This will be paired with a disciplined transfer execution and stronger collections across entities. Where user charges do not cover costs, fee or tariff adjustments will be advanced, particularly in utilities. Mr. Speaker, tax administration reforms at the Barbados Revenue Authority continues to support the performance, the fiscal performance. Targeted enforcement, timely processing of VAT payments, improved compliance management, and sector-specific initiatives have contributed to the mid-year outturn. The authority will sustain these efforts in the second half so that the gains realized by September are preserved through year-end. The Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan remains our anchor. Public sector reform, better service delivery, and improved financial reporting across the public sector, including state-owned enterprises, will continue to reduce fiscal risk and improve value for money. Mr. Speaker, the strategy for the remainder of the year is straightforward. We will preserve the revenue gains realized at mid-year, hold operating spending to target, execute the adjusted capital program, and implement the state-owned enterprise actions needed to bring monitored arrears within the TMU limit. These steps will keep the program on track and maintain the path to debt sustainability. The revised framework maintains fiscal discipline and protects priority social and investment spending. It preserves a strong primary surplus and sustains the credibility earned in recent years, while keeping space for targeted interventions where needed. This maintains our path towards achieving the targeted debt to GDP ratio of 60% by 2035. I invite members to note the progress recorded, the revised outlook to year end, and the steps being taken to support growth, protect the vulnerable, and strengthen the public finances of Barbados. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 10, in the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Companies Economic Substance Repeal Bill 2025.
Honourable Member Christchurch, East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, sir, I propose to have order number 10 and 11 debated as incognito.
The question is that orders number 10 and 11 be debated as a cognate debate, given the fact that they are intimately and interlinked. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. These amendments before the chamber today are part of the government's continued work to ensure that we restore confidence in the name of Barbados. You would recall, sir, in 2018, when the former member for St. Michael North brought, I believe it was 14 pieces of legislation here, sir, to provide for the convergence of taxation in Barbados between what was then the offshore sector as well as the domestic sector, which was as a consequence of an agreement before we came into office in May of 2018. And so we have been on a journey which has been, I think, a very fruitful one, because Barbados then, sir, was known as a low tax jurisdiction, and we were on every list, sir, possible to be on. Gray list, black list, blue list, all kinds of lists, sir, we were on. And the work that the government undertook has now seen us removed from all of those lists. But part of the reason of this amendment here, sir, is that when we, as part of our thrust to ensure that we were able to give confidence to the international community about what we were doing in Barbados, we introduced this concept of economic substance in 2018 as part of the reporting to demonstrate to the world, sir, that we weren't just having shell businesses with one-door shops in Barbados, but that people were actually doing substantive activity in Barbados. And so whilst at that time we thought that with respect to our strategy in 2018, we really should not be glib about this, because the reality is that the economy that we found in 2018 is not the economy today, sir. And the extent to which the focus then was, how do we attract more business to Barbados? We felt that the convergence with respect to our taxation policies meant that we would be in a position to attract more business globally and therefore help improve on the revenue side with respect to the economy. And so we introduced this thing called economic substance as a mechanism to allow for our global partners to have information about what was happening in Barbados. And when I say global partners, I mean specifically that if the competent authority, meaning the entity that is responsible for administering tax in any jurisdiction, wanted to know what a company that was domiciled or predominantly headquartered in their jurisdiction, what they were doing in Barbados, that our Barbados Revenue Authority, in collaboration with the International Business Unit here, would present information to that other tax authority in order to show that we were not allowing companies, sir, to shift their profits in order to avoid paying taxes in those jurisdictions. And so we came up with this economic substance piece of legislation in order to ensure that all of our companies and all of the people who chose to do business in Barbados, that this exchange of information with one tax authority with another would be in place so as to ensure that the work that we were doing, and I know the Honourable Attorney General on a parallel track was working with all of the regular agencies in government, working on the issues related to the Financial Action Task Force, sir, working on issues related to FATCA, working on issues with respect to money laundering, AML and money laundering issues, which are complementary with respect to the tax reforms that we were undertaking at the time. Because having agreed to automatic exchange of information amongst tax administrators globally, this would have been part of the toolkit, if you like, sir, with respect to saying to all and sundry that Barbados is not, was at the time, we may have been regarded as a low tax jurisdiction, that the entities operating in Barbados, sir, were doing things of substance, and that we weren't allowing companies just to come here to avoid paying taxes elsewhere. And so that was the basis for the introduction of the Economic Substance Bill in 2019, late 2018, early 2019, sir, as part of how we were going to use our regulatory framework to defend Barbados' name. Fast forward, sir, what would have been 3 years, the world then agreed that it was going to introduce this global minimum tax, the Globe rules. And we came to this chamber a couple of years ago to introduce the legislation that allowed us then to move our corporation tax again from the converged rates that we had in 2018, sir. And you remember, sir, there was a sliding scale. At the top of the scale was 5.5%, all the way down to 1% on a sliding scale based on the level of profit that a company made. And so with those Globe rules, sir, is a simple standard. Any company that is making more than 750 million euros, sir, or roughly 850 million US dollars, depending on the exchange rate of the day, sir, any company earned with turnover of that amount globally, countries agreed within the OECD framework, sir, that those companies must, no matter where they are operating, no matter where they're operating in the world, sir, there must be a minimum of 15% paid by those entities globally. To avoid the issues of companies setting up and going to different places, sir, in relation and in order to avoid paying taxes. So, if you are a company doing business in Barbados and you are writing your profits in Barbados, or a significant proportion of your profits in Barbados, then the work that we have undertaken allows us then to be able to certify that whilst, yes, we have agreed to move the tax rate to 9%, which is for everybody, with the exception of small businesses, and I will get into that in a little bit, that all the companies now, sir, that are quoted as in scope, meaning all those companies with above that threshold, are now meeting that standard of paying 9%. So you just heard me in the statement, sir, speak to the fact that the revenues have been performing because of the prepayments framework that we've put in place. And so, as a result of that specific intervention, sir, it means now that Barbados is no longer deemed to be a low tax jurisdiction, notwithstanding the fact that we still have a couple sectors that are taxed lower, like, for example, insurance and international shipping. The reality is that the majority of business in Barbados is now have met the standard, quote unquote, with respect to what we have agreed, because the top-up tax of 6%, which would apply, sir, to those companies that are in scope, the companies that earn more than 750 million euros annually, that are in scope, those companies now will be subject to the 6% top-up tax, which allows us to report to any competent authority. So our Barbados Revenue Authority will be able to report to the Canadian Revenue Authority, I suppose it's His Majesty's Revenue and Customs now in the UK, and any other tax office in the world, that any of those companies that are operating in Barbados and writing profits in Barbados, that we now will be able to certify, self-certify, that we now meet the threshold to avoid being labeled as a low tax jurisdiction. So whereas before, when some of these companies, and as you know, sir, these companies don't make a little bit of money, sir. When you see the things reported in the Financial Times and Bloomberg, sir, the quarterly profits that are being declared by some of these companies globally, they're significant sums. And so our ability now to report on what is actually happening in Barbados means that whereas in the past, every company operating in Barbados there was a requirement to do reporting under the economic substance framework. So now that we have moved to a new tax structure, sir, it means that these large companies will no longer have to do this thing called economic substance reporting. And that is why we're here today, sir, to be able to not just repeal that specific part of the act, but to give with respect to the fact that because the income tax amendments that we did a couple of years ago, sir, that with that now, those companies, we will now remove the substance reporting from those companies. Now, let me say, sir, that there may still be some companies, even though they are not in scope with respect to meeting the threshold, there may be some companies, they are doing business here in Barbados, they don't meet the 750 million euros threshold for the top-up tax, but those companies still have to, with respect to where we are now, may still have to be dependent on the structure of the business, and especially with respect to the fact that we have had changing, how should I put it? We've had a change in administration in the United States, sir, and with respect to the passage of their tax bills in the United States, sir, it is made clear that the policy of the United States is to have companies return to the United States. And therefore, incentives were put in place with respect to being able to bring companies back to the United States. And so we have been monitoring to see the impact that that could have on those companies that would ordinarily operate in Barbados, and what that would mean with respect to the change in policy with respect to the new administration in the United States. And let me speak clearly, sir, and plainly. When we introduced the global minimum tax, sir, the United States was on board. With the change in administration, they withdrew from the global minimum tax arrangements. And early this year, against everybody's protests, we currently have almost a dual regime where US companies have a different standard than any other company globally, sir. And that is something that, as I said, as a small state, we will continue to monitor the impact that that will have with respect to how the jurisdiction is potentially viewed, because we were all in sync with respect to having our qualified status be consistent globally. And so we are still in a situation where we do not yet understand fully how the administration of US companies will be conducted moving forward. But with every other jurisdiction, we have all the mechanisms in place to be able to have the automatic exchange of information across authorities. That does not mean, sir, that if there's a query for a company operating out of the United States, that our tax authorities won't cooperate. But the reality is, sir, that within the framework with respect to how their taxes are to be administered, we have reached a situation globally where, because the United States does not want to be subject to the global minimum tax, it presents a little bit of uneven playing field, especially where you have companies operating in the same space, sir, from different countries, that from a competition perspective and certainly as a small state, managing that relationship, sir, is not easy, because everybody wants the playing field to be level. And when the person that owns the bat and the ball decides they can take up the bat and the ball, sir, then it leaves the rest of us out on the playing field looking at one another, trying to figure out how we can deal with this man that got the bat and the ball. And it is not an easy thing. I use that analogy, sir, only to allow the leader of the opposition to understand that when we talk about the international environment being uncertain, that these are the real things that governments have to navigate, because come what may, Barbados has been known to promote a level playing field within whatever spaces companies are operating. And it presents a real challenge with respect to the administration when you have to treat people differently, even though you're doing almost exactly the same thing in the same way. So I say that, sir, for what it's worth, so that the leader of the opposition gets in so he can't say he doesn't know. Can't say he doesn't know. That these are real issues, sir, that the government is faced with. But I make the point, sir, that the requirement for doing substance was part of how we were ensuring that the work that the Honourable Attorney General did with the task force, the work that we were doing on the tax side, sir, that Barbados, we have been able to get off all the lists, all the grey lists, black lists, every list, we have been able to come off, and it's been significant work that the public servants, along with some of the service providers, the accountants, the lawyers, and those people who advise on tax and where businesses come, a significant amount of work has been undertaken by the private as well as the public sector officers in trying to get Barbados to where we are. And so we don't come here today lightly with respect to these amendments, because I think we've earned our reputation, again, sir. We've earned our credibility. And so as part of how the Barbados Revenue Authority, we are doing some more reforms within the Revenue Authority to ensure that our ability to monitor and to ensure that the compliance is there is really due to the work that the task force that the Honourable Attorney General led and continues to lead. And that structure that allows us to be able to say that Barbados, sir, has not just the capability, and it's not easy, sir, because some of these areas are quite specialized. We don't have a lot of the cases that people would like to see being prosecuted and these types of things, which is sometimes hard to navigate and explain. But we have done the work to ensure that not just on the legislative side, but as far as possible within the offices of all of these institutions, from the Central Bank to the FFC to the FIU to BRA, whole range, KIPO, not KIPOs, Business Barbados, a whole range of offices, bank supervision at the Central Bank, a whole range of areas, sir, that we have been able to put a framework in place that allows us to say to the world that the businesses that are operating in Barbados under the regime that we have just rolled out about just under 2 years ago, sir, that we can self-certify and the rest of the world can know that our word is our bond, quote unquote, and that they can trust what we say. Now, having said that, sir, you will recall that when the Prime Minister introduced the bill to bring in the Globe rules, she also indicated at that time that insurance, which is taxed at 0 and 1%, shipping, and she also introduced the concept of the small businesses will be taxed at 5.5%, And we also put a regime in place with respect to being able to attract businesses in Barbados. And that framework, which is in place with respect to taxes at 4.5%, sir, which is half of the 9% that we have in place, is important because as we are attracting these businesses in these areas, then which is going to be quite innovative and to invest in innovative activities, that as we put that regime in place, that they too will have to ensure that they demonstrate that they're doing substance so that there's no confusion with respect to what is happening in Barbados. And so the amendments before the chamber today is effectively to ensure that as we have completed our, and I say completed, sir, our corporate tax reforms, that our ability to report on what is happening in Barbados will continue to be so, but those companies that are in scope, because we have a qualified QDMTT, Global Minimum Tax framework in place, those companies will not be required to do substance, but that the entities that are, which is everybody now, sir, everybody now has to complete substance arrangements. Those ones that have those special arrangements in place will have to continue to do so, to demonstrate it, so that as part of our reporting mechanism, sir, that we don't find ourselves on somebody's list somewhere down the road because we haven't had that system in place. And so it is for that reason that we are here, sir, and it is not to be understated the rationale for why, when tax authority across the world is inquiring about, so just to be clear, sir, no random person can just call up and say, I want to know about company X or Y. It is the relevant tax authority who will contact our Barbados Revenue Authority as the competent authority in Barbados to say, I want to know what is happening with this specific entity. Sometimes, sir, there may very well be some investigation from a law enforcement perspective, and that too will come through the competent authority process in that way. And so long as we are satisfied that it meets those regulatory standards, then our Barbados Revenue Authority, acting as a competent authority, will be able to deliver as the information within that framework. Across the globe, sir, there's something called a Common Reporting Standard, which we've put in place since, I think, about 2017, sir. And as we have sensitized companies, and it's important, I hope, that a lot of businesses may not fully appreciate it, but when companies get particularly large and obviously their tax revenue has a significant impact on or let me say, is a significant share of any government's revenue, it is important to understand what is happening with those entities. And so from a policy-making perspective, it is important that this data is also gathered. And I say that for all businesses in Barbados who seem to think, sir, that the only reason that we want to know about you is because we want to collect tax from you. And that is not necessarily so, sir. It is not necessarily so. Yes, we want to make sure that you've paid the right amount of tax. But if government is to create an environment that allows businesses to grow and to allow the industry within which the businesses are operating, the sectors within which businesses are operating, regional and internationally, sir, then we need to be able to see, collect information that allows us then to determine, sir, what are the things that government can do to respond to be able to provide that framework or environment that they would like to see. And in as much as these large companies are accustomed to sharing information with their tax authorities, because they have to. In Barbados, there's still a lot of too many businesses that, one, don't invest in their own internal systems to collect data and to manage it. And having collected it, share it with the government. So that, obviously, anonymously, sir, because whilst the government we are not interested in your strategic day-to-day operations in that way. What is important is that if government is going to map out and clear the way of any hurdles, then we must have as much of the relevant information as possible to allow for good policy making to take place. And so I make that point in the context of saying, whilst being able to demonstrate that you are conducting yourself of substance, I don't think it should just be to report to tick a box so that people don't put us on a list. I think if we want our companies, sir, to move from small to medium to large to regional to international, then there must be an appreciation that investing in your ability to mine data and to understand what's happening in your environment is important, because as things change globally and the environment within which we're operating changes, and it's changing very quickly, sir, then if government is ever to be in a position to effectively respond, then information must be forthcoming, and not forthcoming because you're in a crisis, because if you're only going to share information, sir, when you're at crisis point, then it's basically too late. And therefore, I want to say to Barbadians and to all companies operating in Barbados that the Barbados Revenue Authority is really your friend, sir. It's really your friend, because it is that entity that collects a whole range of data and information about your company and about companies similarly operating in your space, that allows you to know whether or not you are gaining in market share, or whether you're getting bigger in a smaller market, sir. And therefore, it is important to appreciate that whilst we want to ensure compliance with respect to the administration of tax, there's a really powerful tool that if businesses adopted will help them to grow even faster. But that is something that we will continue to work with the stakeholder groups to communicate with their members, so that there's a better appreciation for why sharing information, timely information, sir, is important. When you leave things to the last minute, you really don't give the government much choice or options to be able to assist. And therefore, whilst we're talking about economic substance, I would want to see, and I urge businesses to please adopt a different approach to how they collect and share data, because this is, as we try to navigate and to bring new industries into the country, that we want to do so in a manner that allows for strategic partnerships to happen within the private sector, that people are sharing information openly, and that the other part of it too is that it means then that ordinary Barbadians, sir, when they got a few dollars to set aside, as we are seeing a lot of interest in the T-bill market, in the bond markets, as we continue to roll that out, sir, that I want to see more and more corporates, and by corporates I mean, sir, whether you're a small business, medium-sized business, or the large ones, that the ability to share your information with the market is also a potential option for raising capital, rather than having to rely solely on loan financing. And I know that the leader of the opposition, again, he is always interested in loans, sir, always interested in loans. But the reality is, businesses providing information into the market, as this government has been providing information into the market, credibly so, allows people to determine, sir, whether they can lend you money or not. Because when people trust the information that you are putting into the public space, sir, and they are prepared, sir, prepared to give you money, I say give meaning loan or equity in your business, sir, it speaks to confidence. So whilst I know that there's a preoccupation with talking about lending and borrowing, the reality of it is, sir, it is all on the basis of the amount of the accuracy of the information that you're putting in the market and how the market is receiving that information that you put into the space. And therefore, do not get twisted, sir. If businesses are to grow in this country, if this country is to meet its development objectives, sir, then we all, government and the private sector, sir, when it comes to providing information, credible information, sir, it is a critical part of the toolkit, sir, with respect to being able to go any place and say to an individual or a business, a bank, an investment bank, a pension fund, or whoever, sir, that the information that I'm sharing with you is credible, and therefore you can trust this information. And when you trust the information, sir, then it means that you can unlock opportunities for financing which you otherwise would not be able to do. So whilst I'm here on this topic of economic substance, I want to reiterate, sir, that the economic strength of Barbados is going to rely on how much information both the government and the private sector are prepared to put into the market, into the open space, or into the public, to allow the public to decide, sir, whether or not I believe that that investment is worthy of my attention. And I think the more businesses do that, the more opportunities for investment will come. But it requires some discipline, sir, with respect to regularity, and therefore you must adopt a different posture with respect to these things. And so this is not a long debate by any stretch of the imagination, sir. You will notice, sir, I have been quite brief of late, and I shall not trespass further, sir. But this particular bill, sir, as I said, is to repeal the Economic Substance Act of 2019, and whilst we are putting the arrangements in place to ensure that our compliance framework, which was basically, I won't say it was totally absent, sir, it was desperate. When we took office 7 years ago, sir, it was all over the place. I think we've been able to create a framework that allows us to make sure that in defense of Barbados' name, that we have put the necessary arrangements in place to be able to defend Barbados' name. And whilst it may not be something that is particularly sexy, it is important because it allows anybody in Barbados to do business. It allows them to do it confidently. And if we're able to have more and more people prepared to start a business in Barbados, prepared to bring their business in Barbados, and to understand how your business can be expanded, then I submit, sir, that it is perhaps necessary to always be in a position to show that Barbados' name as a jurisdiction is clean, and that where you find anomalies from time to time, that there's a framework for dealing with those anomalies, but the majority of people in Barbados, sir, the majority of people in Barbados are engaging with substance. And once the Revenue Authority is able to say, and I just drawing a reference, sir, if there are 100,000 companies in Barbados, that all 100,000 companies, sir, are filing their income taxes. And all 100 companies are filing their annual returns with Business Barbados. And all 100,000 companies, sir, are doing the necessary things to give information or to provide information into the market that says this is a jurisdiction that is well run. And so it isn't that the government won't be peeping on anybody, sir. It is just that when other people look at what is happening and they recognize that, well, something looks doubtful here, because if you have 100,000 companies, but for some reason only 80,000 filing, then you got a problem. And therefore you must be able to demonstrate that you're dealing with that problem. That's what we've been working on over the course of the last few years. And I hope, sir, that with these very, well, I say straightforward, with the ability for the Revenue Authority now to collect this information and to be able to do it in a seamless manner, straightforward manner, that we will be in a position, sir, to make sure that our reporting about what is happening in Barbados is not just top-notch, but the communication of the fact that, one, we got off all the lists, two, that we're able to bring new businesses to Barbados, and that existing businesses in Barbados are growing, sir, because of the confidence that they repose in the policies of this government. That means something, sir, with respect to, one, how those companies are growing, two, the revenues that government will collect, three, the incomes and profits that, and certainly the wages and salaries that are earned within those companies, meaning, sir, that Bajans will also enjoy the benefits of that growth is going to be important. And so, sir, I hope that I've been able to explain, notwithstanding the fact that we're repealing this particular piece of legislation, why it is important to always be able to defend Barbados' name. And now that we are no longer regarded as a lower tax jurisdiction, I hope that we do not rest on our laurels, sir, and that we use this opportunity and the work that has been done over the course of the last 7 years to make sure that that remains, sir, that standard, sir, that we have now set and met, that should not be lowered at any point, sir, in the future going forward. And with those few words, sir, I beg to move, sir, that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker. Permit me to say a blessed and a pleasant good morning to all 9 members of the government who were present when the Honourable Member began his speech. I know that, well, I don't know. I may come to feel flattered that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central is now treating me as his one-person audience, since it seems to me that when he comes here and speaks very intelligently, that his colleagues seem not to be interested in what he says, and that tends to be reflected in body language. But I want to assure the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central that I do appreciate that these days in his speeches he's treating me as his private audience. And I want to say to him that, through you, sir, of course, that I do feel very
special, very flattered that he appears to be treating his speeches in here as a private exchange between the two of us. And if he intends to teach me, I want to confess to him that I will be his very good and attentive student. And I want to further assure him that I have been his very good and attentive student today. I do this at risk, of course, that it may appear as if we're developing something of a mutual admiration society between the two of us. But I wouldn't want to have him explain to his leader what appears to be an emerging relationship of mutual admiration. He does come here and always does his job with such admirable diligence. Although I don't agree with a lot of what he says, it is the intent, it is the seriousness with which he attends to his duty. And I did learn a lot this morning. I did learn that this legislation has more to do on the face of it with, as he said in ending, as the honourable member said when he ended, it has more to do with compliance and reporting than it has to do with much else. And that reminds me, Your Honour, that we are now in an environment in which sovereign rights, even the right to tax, is subject to the power of foreign governments. That's where we are. In a sense, the honourable member has taught us that where international capital is moving across the globe, when it comes to countries like these, who function with sovereign powers under the Constitution, those sovereign powers can sometimes be subject to international scrutiny, the scrutiny of foreign governments, the scrutiny of governments that happen to be very, very powerful geopolitically and militarily, of course. And so we're in the realm of taxation. And while the honourable member does teach me in these private sessions, quote unquote, the mechanics of taxation, financial and fiscal policy, he will be indebted to me for a little exposition on the law, because nothing a government does can it do unless the rule of law applies. And the rule of law would say that not even the government can act beyond constitutional and legal limits. And so, Section 16 of the Constitution says that the citizen has a right to private property, and that the citizen will then sometimes ask the question, but if I have the right to private property, how is it that the government can take my private property through this creature, this instrument called taxation? Well, the citizen will learn that the Constitution that gives him the right to private property carries a section within that same, a subsection, I beg your pardon, within that same section that derogates from the right of the citizen to possess private property and gives the government the right, while acknowledging that right to private property, it gives the government the right to take that private property through this special creature called taxation. And of course, it is an area of government activity that always brings discomfort to the citizen. The citizen tells you that he works hard, whether he's corporate or human, that he works hard for his income, and he feels that he's entitled to keep it. but the government will legitimately say to him that if the government has a program, a philosophy of social democracy, which certainly the Democratic Labour Party has, that taxation is an imperative. You must tax people to provide services. And that brings one immediately to this issue of the Transport Board. By way of example, sir, by way of example, no, I'm talking about taxation here, sir. Your Honor, I am talking about taxation. I am talking about taxation, sir.
I remember. Please. We're not, I remember we're not talking about prima facie, we're talking about substance. So we're not talking about prima facie, we're talking about substance. Right, please. So please, don't veer. The focus, drive the vehicle on the straight and narrow path with this piece of legislation. I think it's becoming so repetitive on all occasions now that you seek to go offline and bring examples that bear no relevance at all to the subject matter. Please, restrain oneself.
I'm obliged to you, sir.
So don't tell me, don't bring this chamber today anything to do with transport boards. It's not before this honorable chamber. When that matter comes, you are at latitude to sow debate. Right. Speak to the issue at hand. Repealing of this piece of legislation. Compliance, we said compliance. Stick to the four corners. You love the Constitution. We stick to the four corners as prescribed by the Constitution in relation to the debate. Yes, the four corners. Don't go both sides.
You know, sir, I always take credit for your alertness when I'm speaking.
I must be. I have to be when it comes to you to ensure that
I take credit for that. If I am to be modest, I will take credit for your alertness while I speak. But I was just sharing that exchange that I normally have with the honourable member for Christchurch East Central, and I was saying to you, sir, that he and I have something of an agreement that he educates me on economics, which includes fiscal policy, and I educate him on the law. And that exchange converged around the issue of taxation. And we were saying to each other, through you, of course, sir, because you would notice that he refers to me directly while his colleagues do all kinds of things. And he had educated me on economics, and in fair exchange, I was educating him on the law. And I was saying to him that taxation, while spurned upon by the citizen, is justified by the Constitution, because the Constitution gives to the government the right to tax. And then he and I went on to exchange that the government taxes so that it can maintain certain social services. That's what he and I were agreeing to.
But he didn't say that, sir. So there's no agreement, and that's not even implied. Stick to what is before this chamber. And if you want to veer off, you will have the opportunity to go somewhere else and veer off. Not whilst I sit in this chair.
So, sir, he may well be a social democrat himself. He may well be a social democrat himself. And he will be the first to say to you that his duty to tax is related to the government's wish to provide social services, whether it is housing, ordinary welfare, education, health, or transport.
I remember, no, please, for the sake of the chamber, you are trying to dance around. This is no dance session. You will not be allowed to circumvent what the law prescribes, what the Constitution prescribes. I know Section 16. That you are the Ophelia King. If you want to talk Constitution and the same right to property, I'm very familiar with that also. But you're not going to bring into here things that are not relevant at all. End of story, full stop.
So you're not going to allow...
No, correct, I'm not going to allow it.
No, I haven't finished the question without...
I'm not even letting you finish.
You're not going to allow us to tell the public why a government taxes.
I'm not going to allow you to talk things that are irrelevant in this court. This is my court.
Well,
this is my court.
it seemed that the noises began when I referred to transport. I will drop the word transport and say that the government has the special constitutional right, even by way of derogation derogation away from section 16.1, and it has the right to tax. We will not refer to the reasons why a government taxes, since you don't wish us to refer to those reasons, even if we are discussing social democracy.
Honourable member, that has nothing to do with the issue before this chamber. Please read what is repealing, etc. You can read that better.
Yes, I intend to read it, sir.
I make no reference at all.
You would not want to, in a parliament where free speech is cherished, to circumscribe debate within very narrow confines. I don't think you wish to do that, sir, since the honourable member, he's still here, the honourable member himself, and I don't think he minds, even if...
Honourable member, they're going to do with what the honourable is like controlling this chamber, and I do it what you believe or what any member on this side believes. As the old people say, I call the shots in here. End of story.
Well, let us just agree, Your Honor, within the manner in which you circumscribe the debate, to say that the government has the right to tax, but we now agree not to say why the government taxes. Let us leave that alone, Your Honor. Let us leave that alone. Let us not tell the public about the various areas into which the government puts that taxation, whether it is housing, education, health, or transport.
Honourable member, you said that before, and I asked you to go on to leave it out. This is the second time you used those four things: education, transport. I told you to leave those, please.
And I'm obliged for your alertness, sir. So let us move on, and let us move back to the legislation. We had reached the point after that minor contention as to what a government does with its taxes and what a government ought to do with its taxes. Let us press on to this question of the sovereign right to tax being subject to international power. As I said before, here is capital, private capital, for the most part, seeking a domain, seeking a home. And of course, the honourable member for Christchurch East Central would have said this, that, or well, he would have insinuated that while that private international capital seeks domains, it must not at the same time operate in one domain to the detriment of its domicile, whether that domicile is the United States or Canada or Europe for that matter. It must not come here and seek a haven that gives unfair advantage to the entity itself. That is what we're here about today, sir. So that you're probably right to take us back into the strict confines of this legislation. And I trust that in future, members will be similarly confined. I did notice, though, that the honourable member for Christchurch East Central took the debate into borrowing and lending. And I was wondering why that was done. Now, if I respond to what the honourable member said in relation to borrowing and lending, I think the honourable member said that we seem to have this obsession, this preoccupation with the government's habit of borrowing and lending. And supposing I said, sir, that there is no criticism that the government is not only borrowing but lending garbage trucks. If I say that in direct response to the honourable member, I doubt you would circumscribe the content of my speech. But the honourable member did go on to criticize this side for its preoccupation with the government's habit of borrowing and lending. I don't know what that had to do with the issue of taxation, but you endured it, sir, because you understand when the honourable member speaks that he is entitled to liberal debate. That is what this parliament is about. It's about liberal debate, and it is about the freedom to speak, and to speak in broad and wide terms. So let us come back then, Your Honour, to this question that is dealt with by this legislation. It was one of the rare occasions in which the honourable member has piloted legislation in here and did not read portions of it. He did confess, though, that he is losing the ability to go on for longer than he used to. Loss of stamina is understandable. He's worked hard for the last 7 years. In fact, he's the hardest working member in this government, which is not really difficult to achieve, but we still commend him. And he did admit to that loss of stamina, and in losing that stamina, he failed to tell the country the particulars of the legislation. And since he and I seem to be having private exchanges in here, I will do for him what he ought to have done for the public. And I will not do this to help him. I'm doing this to help the public to understand what this legislation is about today. To use a modern term, the more granular aspects of the legislation. What it does, Your Honour, broadly speaking, it adds to the present Income Tax Act. It creates an entirely new section under the Income Tax Act. And as the honourable member said, that new section concerns itself with economic substance, compliance, and reporting. I want the public to be aware as to this concept of economic substance. And the honourable member, in fairness to him, did deal with it, except that he did not read the legislation. I am going to read the legislation, and I'm going to read it for a particularly good reason, I think. It will take me some time, but the public is entitled to hear what the business of this parliament is about. This parliament belongs to the public. When we do something here, the public must understand it. That's why we speak in English, incidentally, so that the public understands. And I'm going to read what is written here in English today, sir. And that's not to be sarcastic. That is to make the point that whenever we come here, the public must understand what we are doing. And we are duty-bound to read the legislation that will become the law in this country. Permit me to do this, sir. I looked upon the concept of economic substance rather curiously. I confess that it was not a concept that was readily within my grasp. I confess that, since in humility, I always say in here, I do not know everything. And if I'm the only one among 29 willing to confess that I don't know everything, I am not ashamed of that. And so I am indebted to the honourable member for Christchurch East Central for reintroducing this parliament and this country to the concept of economic substance. And Your Honour, you can be assured that in discussing economic substance, I will not vary the discussion into areas that you may fear at this point in time. Trust me, sir. Here's what the legislation says. Section 52B, subsection 1. A company described in section 52A2 shall have economic substance. And the public now wants to know about what is this economic substance? And the legislation itself is helping the public. Subsection 2 reads, subject to subsection 6, the company shall, for the purposes of subsection 1, conduct its core income generating activities in Barbados and comply with the requirements set out in subsection 3 in relation to a relevant activity carried on in Barbados in an income year. So that we are getting a sense, the legislation is now giving us a sense as to what is economic substance. Here, a company whose core income generating activities exists in Barbados. So we are getting that sense as to what is economic substance. And of course, there's to be compliance in relation to a relevant activity carried on in Barbados in an income year. Subsection 3 offers even greater definition and explanation. It says the requirements referred to in subsection 2B are that the company A is directed and managed in Barbados and its decision-making processes are carried out in Barbados. Again, the concept of economic substance being defined, revealed by the legislation. So beyond the issue of the income generating activity, the core being generated in Barbados, subsection 3 now tells us that apart from the activity, the economic activity taking place here, it must be directed and managed in Barbados, and its decision-making processes ought to be carried out in Barbados. So the substance of the thing, the activity carried on here, and not only the activity carried on here, but the directorship and management also resident in Barbados. And that is interesting. B goes on to give further definition. Has, having regard to the nature and level of income derived from the relevant activity, an adequate amount of operating expenditure incurred in Barbados, which is proportionate to the level of activity carried on in Barbados. Again, so you see the whole thing coalescing around residents in Barbados. Goes on further, an adequate physical presence in Barbados, including maintaining a place of business and office premises or plant property and equipment for the purpose of carrying on the activity. Again, the core of business being conducted in Barbados. This is all the Act. This is what the Act is doing to define economic substance. And thirdly, an adequate number of employees or other personnel with appropriate qualifications who are physically present in Barbados. I don't think I need go beyond that. That the legislation gives some fair definition to this concept of economic substance. It is residential at its core in terms of the activity and in terms of management. Now, the public will become curious. Why then do you need this legislation? Why then do you need legislation that defines the concept of economic substance? Who is this really intended to capture? And if we try to identify entities that this legislation may capture, remember, Your Honor, we are within the context of the duty to comply and to report to international agencies and particularly international agencies who protect the right of countries to collect taxes from their citizens wherever they are. And that is important, wherever they are. As you know, sir, the United States has the right to collect taxes from its citizens any part of the world. And that is why the United States allows its citizens to vote wherever they are in the world. if there is an economic right or financial right that the United States gives itself as a government, it extends, there's a correlating or corresponding, I beg your pardon, political right of the citizen to vote wherever he is in the world. That is interesting. I share that. I share that willingly with the nine who were here this morning when the honorable member started to speak. I like the public to know what's going on in here, you know? I really do. So that when the shouting begins, the public thinks it is 29. It's only 9. It's only 9. Quite often it is only 9. When the prayers were said in here, 9 little more here on the taxpayers' money and time. But, Your Honor, I was expecting you to tell me to press on, and I will save you, and I will press on. We're back to this thing of economic substance. Your Honor, please permit me. The public then wonders about the juncture at which we find ourselves as a country. And the public has heard this definition. The public has heard this protection given to entities that are operating in Barbados and managed in Barbados, except that we must explain to the public that the majority of companies that operate here don't need this legislation. And it is because there are thousands of companies in Barbados that somebody gets up a morning and says, look, I want corporate personality. I want my business to receive the protection of the Companies Act. And he goes down to corporate affairs and he registers his company. You are aware, sir, that the old Companies Act, I think it was 1948.
Cap 308, Honourable Member.
Cap 308. The old 1948 legislation. That's why I like it when you're there on matters of law. And that 1948 legislation governed companies law in this country until 1982. I think that's when the Modern Companies Act came into being. One would appreciate that that 1948 legislation emerged after the war, when Britain would have been bringing itself to some order. And part of that order was to allow companies to exist and to be stable. But let us not digress, sir. So that in 1982, what was revolutionary at the time, oh dear. What was revolutionary at the time was that the 1982 Companies Act allowed one-person companies, so that a man or a woman could wake up a morning and say, look, this business I have here, I want to constitute it with corporate protection. In other words, liability does not extend to the person who owns the company, who owns the business. Let me say the person who owns the business. That business may be separate and apart from that individual. I say it was revolutionary because previously, under the old legislation, you had to have this administrative complex and you had to have a minimum number of shareholders and directors and so on. The 1982 Companies legislation democratized the concept of the corporation. One man or one woman could constitute his business as a corporation. Again, sir, let us not digress. That 1982 legislation continues to this day, and by the way, it was harmonized across the Caribbean. The CARICOM countries all passed legislation, companies law legislation, which was quite similar. It was harmonized. We all knew what the other was doing. The point I'm making, Your Honor, is that that legislation has protected all companies from 1982 to present. The companies are resident here, the activities take place here, the directors live here, they're all local. So the public now is very curious as to why you need this special category of legislation relating as it is to this concept of economic substance. And the legislation today, the amendment today, is defining economic substance, and it is making the activity residential, and the directorship must also be residential. So what is different? For whom is this legislation intended? Now, is the public entitled to ask this government questions? Or will this government object to a debate that travels beyond very narrow confines? Is the public entitled to ask whether it is coincidence that this legislation comes at a time that 4 letters find themselves dominating this landscape? U-B-E-R, Uber? Is the public entitled to ask that question? Is the public entitled to ask this government that question? Am I entitled, as a voice, representative of public interests, that question as to whether there is a coincident relationship between this legislation today and the presence of Uber on this landscape? Now, I'm going to read those subsections again. In answer to my question, I think I need to read those subsections again. It speaks of the entity having an adequate amount of operating expenditure incurred in Barbados, which is proportionate to the level of activity carried on in Barbados. Supposing a member of the public, let's choose any member of the public, supposing a taxi driver on Broad Street or in the port raises the question as to whether Uber has made this substantial investment in Barbados, certainly financial or human resource. Supposing that taxi driver in the port asks that question in addition to the other questions they're asking. Supposing the taxi driver out there by, used to be Manning's, I don't know what is out there now, Chefette or something, or the taxi drivers further down by the Mutual building, by the Sagicor building, supposing they ask these questions as to whether Uber has brought capital, adequate amounts of capital into this country, or whether they have brought privilege into this country. Now, this legislation does not speak to the question of privilege. This legislation speaks to the question of expenditure of capital. In other words, you're coming here to make an investment, and it must be of some help to this economy. Is that what Uber is about, sir? Or does Uber have the power and the privilege of management while its subordinates have only the burden of ownership? And I can simplify that. A man who joins Uber, and we're still on this legislation, a taxi driver who joins Uber has the responsibility for driving, maintaining his car, and paying all license fees. What is Uber's responsibility under this legislation, which is tax legislation? Those questions must be asked. And the taxi drivers in this country are entitled to ask those questions. And the taxi drivers in this country not only entitled to ask these questions, but they're entitled to ask whether this legislation is merely coincident, whether it is a mere coincidence that this legislation comes at a time that Uber comes into this country. So I've listened to the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central, delight in the virtues of this legislation, as it pertains to the duty to comply and report. But nothing has been said about the workings of this legislation, and we are entitled to ask whether this legislation is intended as a benefit to Uber. We're entitled to ask that. And I don't think it has taken the debate beyond legitimate confines. I don't think so. I don't think so. There must be an answer, and there must be a good answer. But the public awaits the answer. And the question is asked in all seriousness, because this government has a sovereign duty to protect the citizens of this country who have made their own personal financial investments into this country. Whether a foreign entity comes here or not, Barbadians must maintain their rights, and this government or any other government is under a moral, political, and social and economic responsibility to protect Barbadians. The question is asked in all frankness: for whom do the bells of this legislation toll? For whose benefit is this legislation intended? Simple questions. Simple questions. No malice intended, and no insult expected when the question is answered. I could go on, Your Honor, to subparagraph 4, and I will. A company may outsource to another person in Barbados its core income generating activities in relation to a relevant activity carried on in Barbados if the company is able to monitor and control the conduct of the core income generating activity by the other person. Does it sound like Uber, sir? Does it sound like Uber? Is this government hiding its protection of a foreign entity behind legislation? It's a fair question. And all that I ask may be dismissed by an honest answer. And if there's no answer, the public will continue to assume that the government is either not willing to answer, not able to answer, or believes that it owes no answers to the people of this country. These are questions. And these are questions that I, on this side, have the right to ask in defense of the rights of the people of this country. I concede that I may be wrong. And not for the first time I may be wrong, except that I have the right to be wrong. But tell the people of this country that they are wrong if they ask these questions. And I ask it again. Is the emergence of this legislation a mere coincidence with the arrival of Uber into this country? What is Uber bringing? I dare to ask that question. I have the courage to ask that question. Not because there's any malice against any foreign entity involving or including Uber, but because the people of this country, the citizens of this country, have the right to equal government protection. For whom do the sweet bells of protection toll in relation to this legislation? Is it Uber? And if it is not so, they will tell you. And if it is so, please, people of Barbados, force them
On a
to
point
tell
of
you.
order, Mr. Speaker, I think we've endured enough of this
Honourable Member St. Joseph.
thing. You know, I suspect he doesn't understand that this is a cognate debate. Well, that much is evident. That much is evident. But you know, sir, if you would read the very legislation, where it says, a company described in section 52A2 shall have economic substance. Fine. Then it goes on, subject to subsection 6, the company shall, for the purposes of subsection 1, conduct its core income generating activities in Barbados. Conduct its core income generating activities in Barbados, sir. Uber is a global company. We take them wherever we go. The notion that Uber in Little Barbados, with 400 taxis, could be conducting its core income generating business in Barbados is so patently absurd that the honourable member really ought to stop displaying his ignorance.
Mobilize.
Continue, Honourable Member.
Now, first of all, we are grateful for the admission from the government that the company they brought here now has 400 employees. The people of Barbados are grateful that the learned Attorney General has got up now and admitted that the company that this government
I'm sure he
has brought
said
here...
400 taxis.
Honourable Member.
And I didn't intend to be accurate. But I'm sure he said taxis, not employees. But answered.
Taxis are employees. I meant employees
I
because
said
the taxi
taxis.
driver is now the employee
I said
of Uber.
taxis.
Honourable Member.
You say taxis?
Honourable Member, you have to speak to the chair. Honourable Member, this is not a shouting match.
All right.
This
We shouted too.
is not a shouting match in any avenue.
Well, both of us will cease to shout, sir.
Honourable Member, when I speak, we are not in Cheapside or Bridgetown Fisheries Complex or in
These
Oistins.
are people down there too, sir.
Honourable Member, I am speaking. I am speaking. This is not a fish market brawl. It is not. And it shall never descend into that as long as I'm sitting in this chair. We're supposed to act in a civil manner. Not only that, but we're supposed to act as responsible people, setting worthwhile patterns for our young people, not like this. And then we ask why our young people are like this. But if we shout across and we'll be absurd and volatile, then what do we expect when we see young persons coming before the court with violent disorders, etc.? Because we are not setting an example here. This is supposed to be a place where debate is civil and humane, and it shall continue to be so as long as I'm sitting in this chair. Continue, RMF for Christ yourself.
And I thank you, sir, for censoring the Honourable Attorney General for the use of offensive language.
Honourable Member, you can't. Honourable Member, please refrain, please. Honourable Member, I spoke nothing to the Honourable Member for St. Joseph. And you know better. You know better. But remember, just Honourable Member, remember Gabby's song. Remember that song. Pay close attention to it. One day coming soon. Continue, Honourable Member.
But, Mr. Speaker, I regret, while I'm happy for the member to continue, he really casts aspersions.
I will have it struck from the record, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much.
I will have it struck from the record.
By that I meant language that offended.
Honourable Member, I make that determination, not you.
No,
But-
it
but
offended me.
But it offended you. Honourable Member, please. Honourable Member, continue, please. Please continue.
Yes, and I will do so above the voice of the Honourable Member for St. Thomas, who thankfully is awake today.
Honourable Member, continue, please. Continue.
You heard it, right?
Honourable Member, continue.
You heard it, sir?
Yes. Honourable Member, continue, please.
So that when I spoke of offensive language, I meant language which offended
Honourable
me
Member,
subjectively.
continue as it relates to the debate. We have gone past that.
But she's continuing, sir.
Honourable Member, continue,
Shut her
please.
up, sir. Shut her up. You have that power, sir. Shut her up. So that when the learned Attorney General finally got to his feet, when the learned Attorney General finally got to his feet to admit that there are 400 entities under the, I'm going to use a term that old people use, under the dominion of Uber. I use the word employees, not in a legal sense. Not in a legal sense. Not in a legal sense. And by the way, the honourable member for Christchurch East Central is the only economist in here. And he hasn't been fired, not once nor twice. Not once nor twice. Hasn't been fired.
Honourable, can we continue with the debate as it relates to the legislation before this chamber?
Twice. Yes.
Can we do that?
I'm
please?
going to push them back.
Honourable member, can we
I'm
continue?
going to push them back.
Honourable member,
Let
continue.
them come. Hasn't been fired once nor twice. Uber sent you something? Well, make it part of the debate.
Honourable member, please, please, let us resort to the debate before the chamber
But tell
and
the
not
honourable member-
get involved in all the asides and crosstalk.
Did you hear the learned Attorney General interrupt the debate?
Honourable member, please continue and stop. Continue on what you, as it relates
Yes.
to what is before
And
this
we
chamber.
were on the right of the taxi fraternity in this country to ask questions of this government. And I'm not backing down. I don't care what text message the learned Attorney General gets from whoever he gets it from. That does not preclude the right of the citizens of this country who are now subject to new controls to ask questions and to ask whether this legislation is deliberately coincident with the arrival of Uber in Barbados. Is that an unfair question? Is it unreasonable? Is it unlawful? Is it illegal? Is it immoral? No, it is not. It is not. You know, when this government gets bothered, man, the public hears a chorus.
Honourable member, we're speaking on legislation.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, look, Your Honor, I have the right to speak in here, as every member has the
I will
right
never take
to
that
speak
right
in
away from you.
silence. Precisely.
I will never take that away from you.
So that, Your Honor, when you hear the honourable member for St. Thomas shouting across at me, please shut her up. I enjoy the fact that sometimes she's awake, and I know she revels in moments
On a
of being
point of order,
awake.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have not yet this morning discussed or said anything on any matter in this honourable chamber. I am awaiting my time, please. You want psychiatric?
Welcome to the debate. You slept during the opening. And so the question remains, Your Honor. The question remains. I was on to subparagraph 4, and I am on to subparagraph 5, which speaks as follows. A company is directed and managed in Barbados if the board of directors of the company meets in Barbados at an adequate frequency given the level of decision-making required. Now, why would we have legislation in Barbados speaking this way? Why would we have legislation in Barbados prescribing that those who manage the operation should be here and that decisions should be made here? As I said, sir, under the Companies Act and the tax legislation, it is not an issue. It is not an issue that the company operates here, that the core of its activities are here, that the management and directorship are here. In this legislation, what is ordinarily accepted becomes legislated. Why is it now legislated? Why is it now legislated? Is not the public entitled to ask the question as to why what is ordinarily the case now needs to be legislated? And the discomfort is not going to silence me. I will continue to ask the question as to whether the legislation is intended to apply to companies such as the one to whom I referred. I will not back off from that. Let the Honourable Attorney General get up when I'm finished and answer in a decent and parliamentary way, and not interrupt me by talking about ignorance and these text messages he just got. I don't care what text messages he just got.
Honourable member, that behavior will not be tolerated in this chamber.
It ought not to be.
Honourable member.
It ought not to be.
Honourable member, I'm speaking. When I speak, I believe that I have a right of audience here, and that when I speak, that the chamber becomes silent.
Every time you speak the truth, I hear it touches a raw nerve. And you know, Your Honor, I'm not going to count the numbers of the government members in here now, but I'm not afraid of one of them. One, not one. Not one. Beg your pardon? I am not afraid of them.
Honourable member, please allow the honourable member for Christ yourself to speak in. Please, please.
Thank you very much, sir. This is a great moment. This is a great moment. Please, I thank you, Your Honor, for silencing the former Deputy Speaker. And I hope she doesn't disobey your order. I hope the Honourable member, in her embarrassment now, does not disobey.
Honourable member, please, please, let us go past that. We are speaking, this ought not to be a political arena and stuff. This is a humane civil debate dealing with an issue. Please.
And as soon as I began to talk about Uber, all kinds of noise and interruption. Who is this sacred cow now on the corporate landscape of Barbados? That on behalf of the taxi drivers in Barbados, I can't ask a question. I am not accusing Uber of anything illegal nor immoral. I am saying that there is a presence in Barbados that is disruptive of an industry in which a lot of poor people have been able to get 1, 2, or 3 cars and form their own business. And it has been placed under threat by the emergence in this country of an invited corporate entity called Uber. And they can reply as much as they wish. It is my insistence that Uber was brought into this country by this government and that it is disrupting the delivery of taxi services. You can leave if you want. That is what I'm saying. That you don't have a tourism industry without a taxi industry. That is the contribution that this industry has made to Barbados. And we have a learned Attorney General who gets up in here today for the first time on behalf of the government and admits as to the numbers of persons who have signed up in subordination to an entity that has been brought into this country by this government. And I'm not going to silence my voice on that. I'm not. Because this government needs to hear what is being said in the public domain. They need to hear. They need to hear the concerns of the people in this public. That there's a lot of anti-people policy coming out of this government. Whether it is the cabinet or the parliament, it is anti-people. And because I reflect the views of the public, I must be subject to verbal assault. I am not afraid of anybody in this government. And I hope they're not afraid of me. I am very gentle. I didn't come here to frighten anybody, and nobody on that side can frighten me. They can't shoot me, they can't beat me. I don't know what they plan to do. So I will press on, sir. I will press on and ask the government to deny that it brought Uber to Barbados. I will press on and remind the people of Barbados that when corporate affairs, a department of government was corporatized, a member of this government said that it will facilitate the trillions of dollars that are all over the world looking for a place to invest. Now, I don't offend. I don't offend anybody in here personally. But that statement had no basis in anything rational, commercially rational. And I'm trying to be kind. And in the aftermath of that corporatization of CAIPO, CAIPO we call it, and with this legislation, here we see the kind of company that comes into Barbados. Not with large financial investment, because that's what this country needs. And from the 60s, under Lewis's industrialization by invitation, the entities historically brought capital. And not only did they bring capital, but they employed people. The wages were modest, but those were modest times. And they employed thousands of Barbadians. We are getting the kind of company now that is coming to this country and purporting to employ people who are already employed. And not only that, worse, the activities of this new quote-unquote investor will diminish the incomes of people who are already working in the industry. And the opposition must be verbally assaulted for raising these issues. I have a right to raise them, because it is not me alone raising them in this country. The people out there are talking about it, and they must be afraid. Of whom? Not a fella. Not one. Present or absent, I'm afraid of nobody in this government. I have the right and I have the wherewithal to come here and to speak based on knowledge and training and a sense of honesty, integrity, decency, and the enabling virtue called courage. And if the government wishes, and if you will allow it, sir, the issue of taxation to be discussed, since we are on a debate dealing with taxation, I would ask the honourable member for Christchurch East Central, who likes to take this parliament on excursions of recent history. And the honourable member said during his presentation, his address, his speech, that things are better now than they were in 2018. And I want to remind the honourable member that when this government came to office in 2018, and we are on the issue of taxation, that a pledge was made to the people of Barbados that VAT would be reduced from 17.5%. I want to remind the honourable member for Christchurch East Central of that. And the honourable member for Christchurch East Central will not deny it. That was a promise made by the government in 2018. What has happened to that promise, honourable member, through you, sir? A government that claims to be pursuing progressive taxation that promised to remove VAT from the shoulders of Barbadians. I've said elsewhere, and I'll say it here, sir. You've asked me to make some speeches elsewhere, but a speech that I made elsewhere, I have the right to make it here too. And it is not only the bullets that are killing people, it's the cost of living that is killing people in this country. And this government must have recognized it. This government must have recognized that VAT is a burden on the average Barbadian. It's a burden. Whether you're rich or poor, anytime you purchase a commodity, whether goods or services, and you must add 17.5%. One, it is a disincentive. Two, it is a burden. Maybe it's a benefit to government. But the economists will tell the government that the government has a responsibility as a good and caring government to remove burdens from people's shoulders. And that is precisely why in 2018 the government made that promise. What say this government now to the people of Barbados? Having been a government for going on 8 years, why does the government find itself unable to remove that burden? I want to say to this government, sir, and I'm not an economist, I've already said there's only one in here, and he never got fired. Not once nor twice. I want to say to the honourable member for Christchurch East Central that the economist, his colleagues, will tell him that there comes a time when you must not only remove burdens, tax burdens from the shoulders of people, but that you must put more money in the economy to generate an economy that is stagnating. Except that the government believes its own propaganda, that this economy is buoyant. It is not buoyant in Swan Street. It is not buoyant on Broad Street. It is not buoyant in any of the malls of Barbados. And to quote you, sir, it is not buoyant in the fish market. You know, I'm still trying to get compensation for those fish vendors, honourable member for Christchurch West Central, if that is still under that good and compassionate member. There are still some fish vendors. I appeal to you personally and politically. Please check the books and see that there are some fish vendors who have not been paid. A lot of the boat owners and fishermen have been paid, and I congratulate the honourable member for Christchurch West Central. But I always tell the story here of the shepherd with the 100 sheep, and the one that went missing became as important as the 99 that were safe. There are still some who have not been paid. Please pay them. Please pay them. And so if this were a good, caring, and compassionate government, this government would find it fit on the cusp of the 8th year of its existence to reduce VAT in Barbados as a tax. And this government finding itself after 8 years unable to do it, a new government will do it. A new government will reduce VAT from the shoulders of people in this country. Not because a new government is nice, but a new government understands economics. That if you want to generate a stagnant economy, you put more money in that economy and try to control your foreign exchange component. But this government has said that it has record levels of foreign exchange, and we are not prescribing a raid on foreign exchange, but we are prescribing new life for the people of Barbados. We are prescribing new vitality for the people of Barbados. And I say to this government, and not so much to this government, but to the people of Barbados through you, sir, that the only way in which this country and the citizens of this country will find new financial and economic freedom is if, in the first place, VAT is reduced. And I challenge this government on that debate. I challenge the honourable member for Christchurch East Central, who's the only economist in here, to engage, not with me, but the economists in this country. I'm not an economist. On the issue of VAT, is 17.5% reasonable at this point in time? Should it not be reduced at this point in time? Does it not offer, not total, but partial salvation to the people of this country? Or must they continue to live with the burden of a high cost of living while the government claims that this economy is buoyant? It is not. I repeat, Your Honor, that if it is God's will, I'm a Christian, if it is God's will that a new government should come to this place, one of the first orders of business would be to do what this 8-year-old government promised to do over the last 8 years, to reduce VAT. It has to be done, it must be done, it will be done, and the people of Barbados expect it. What must they continue to do? Must they continue to endure daily burdens upon an 8-year promise? Does this government understand what is a journey to the supermarket like? Does this government understand that? Does this government have any explanation for the absence from school of a lot of our children? Does this government understand that? Does this government even know that it is happening in Barbados? And it is happening because people do not have spending power. And one of the primary ways of returning spending power to the poor people of this country and the not so poor and the middle class and the upper middle class even, is to increase their spending power. And one of the means and the primary means of doing that is by reducing VAT from 17.5%. I challenge this government at this juncture to tell the people of Barbados if it intends to reduce it, and if it intends to reduce it, if it will renew an 8-year promise to say by how much it will reduce it. The debate starts today. It starts today. And the people expect this government to respond. And if this government finds itself unable to respond, the people will continue to believe that the government will continue to breach its promise, a promise solemnly made 8 years ago. I'm off that, sir. I think I've said all that needs to be said on that. And to come back to the legislation, you expect me to say, sir, whether I support or do not support. All I will say, Your Honor, I will stay with the questions I have asked. I will stay with the questions I have asked as to the possible relationship between this legislation and the emergence of an entity brought into this country by this government. Let this government deny that it has brought the entity into this country. Let this government say to the people of Barbados that it came like a thief in the night, and government woke up like everybody else and saw it on our doorstep. They didn't go through the entity that was corporatized either earlier this year or late last year. They didn't go through there. They haven't registered under the corporate laws of Barbados. Did they not? Any company that is registered and operating in Barbados, the government is given notice of it through its official departments, formerly CAIPO, now I think called Business Barbados or something like that. And when I heard a member of the government saying that the entity came here and they did not know, that is a patent untruth. The government knows every company that comes into this country, and that's why you have an administrative complex, beginning with registration. And when a company applies for registration, the minister has notice, because the minister, according to that administrative complex, that hierarchy of responsibility, gives permission, gives consent. So let this government, sir, not be heard to say, let not this government be heard to say that that entity came into this country without government's knowledge. That's not true. That's not true. And I repeat, even if the government is uncomfortable with the allegation, I repeat, that even within the four corners of this legislation, it will take more than it will invest. And it is investing very little. And if I'm to become enemy number one of the company, I'm sorry, I speak for the taxi people here who have invested for years and years, blood, sweat, and tears. Blood, sweat, and tears. And to see the emergence of an entity which enjoys the power and the privilege to regulate without the burden and the responsibility of ownership. I don't use emotive terms in here. But if someone says that that is recolonization of an industry that had become indigenous. How can you fault them? The origins of the taxi industry in this country is one in which a few persons, a few companies owned the taxis, and men were taxi drivers. They used to wear the cap and a uniform. And evolving out of that was self-ownership of the vehicles, private ownership of the vehicles. The men who drove the cars owned the cars. Under this new system, the men who own and drive the cars will no longer control their incomes. And is there something fundamentally wrong about saying that? Is there something so fundamentally wrong about asking the question? And must the government believe that it is wrong to ask the question simply because it is asked on behalf of poor people? And I don't use the term poor emotively. It's a description related to income and a history of social and economic disadvantage. And I don't think anybody in this chamber is distant from that history and that reality. Not one of us is distant from that social reality. And so those are questions that we must continue to ask on behalf of the people of this country. And that we must inquire as to the motive behind this legislation, out of which I have culled suspicious sections, or sections that raise suspicion as to special protection being offered to entities that have sailed into this country without much of a financial investment, but are now poised to exploit an industry, to take out of an industry, and to go merrily along without having shed blood, nor sweat, nor tears. Your Honor, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I sat here listening carefully and wondered how I should respond to what I just heard. Because really and truly, sir, there was nothing of any substance in the presentation. But I shall leave that there and will answer the honourable member as forthrightly as I can. Now, all matters of taxation, sir, are clearly articulated in the legislation in the Income Tax Act. Any company, sir, operating in Barbados, one, if your annual turnover is less than $2 million and you're registered with the small business, under the Small Business Development Act, sir, you pay corporate income tax at a rate of 5.5%. All other companies, sir, will pay taxes at 9%. And so the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is asserting that somehow or the other, this amendment, which is before the chamber today, has something to do with Uber, not only just lacks substance, sir, I just think it is disingenuous. Because to suggest that we are getting in some arrangement with Uber to disadvantage Barbadians, I really don't know how to respond to that, sir. But be that as it may, sir, be that as it may, any company operating in Barbados has to operate under those tax arrangements, with the exception of those entities that we want to support investing in innovative areas, sir, whose corporate income tax will be 4.5%, sir. which is clearly articulated in the amendments that came before this chamber in 2024, are already in place. So there's nothing salacious, there's nothing that the government is getting up to that is suspicious, sir. There's nothing of the sort in relation to the company that he raised or any other company that is purporting to operate in Barbados. And the Honourable Attorney General is absolutely correct. Whatever the number of entities or persons or whoever that might sign up for Uber, sir, Uber, in reporting its revenue and profits to the Barbados Revenue Authority, will pay any tax that is relevant on the basis of the schedule that we have outlined with respect to taxation. So I really want to dismiss that out of hand, sir, because it makes no sense. The honourable member raised a matter in relation to cost of living. And I want to remind the country through you, sir, that the minimum wage was introduced into this, the minimum wage of $6.25, sir, was introduced into this parliament in December of 2024. Sorry, 2004. December 2004, sir. Okay? Note the date, December 2004. We came into office in May of 2018, sir. And the minimum wage was $6.25, sir. And at that time, the VAT had been increased from 15%, sir, to 17.5%, sir, by the political party that the leader of the opposition now is associated with, sir. At no time between 2008 and 2018 did anybody in Barbados find relief from the Democratic Party government, sir. At no time. And the leading opposition, if he was honest with himself, sir, if he was honest with himself, would say so publicly. But further, sir, when we did our manifesto in 2018, sir, it was on the basis of having a certain set of data. Now, sir, I make no apologies about it. We, this government, had to resolve $600 million, sir, owing to CLECO, a private enterprise, sir, a private enterprise. And we had to do that. We responded, sir, and then had to deal with COVID on top of having to deal with that. As well, sir, as the contracts that we had to renegotiate that exposed the very taxpayers, the people earning $6.25 an hour, sir, for the whole time that they were in office, the whole 10 years. You understand? So he coming in here now to suggest that he care about people and the cost of living, sir. But more, I ain't even getting to that. But this government, sir, and let me repeat, $6.25, December of 2004. The Barbados Labour Party was in office in December 2004, sir. Not a raise in minimum wage for the entire 10 years of the Democratic Labour Party. But you know what, sir? Against everything that we faced in this country in the last 7 years, in 2021, sir, this government came here and raised the minimum wage to $8.50, sir. And then earlier this year, sir, we increased it again to $10.50, sir. So yes, we have not been able to reduce the VAT as we had originally promised, But we had to deal with all them things. But in dealing with all those things, sir, we still did not lose sight of the very people that he coming in here to claim he has all this concern for, sir. And we had salary increases for the public servants. The private sector also has salary increases in the last 7 years, sir, because this government, sir, took an economy that was in crisis, sir. We stabilized it, and it started to grow, sir. So don't come in here with no right hand talking about, oh, a new government gonna do this and the next and third, sir. He don't know what no new government gonna do, sir. And I don't say so lightly, sir, because we spent a lot of time, sir, as I said in the beginning of this debate, on trying to ensure the reputation of Barbados, sir, was sound. And we did so because of those very people that he claims now, sir, to want to represent. We have been, sir, responding to the needs of the people of this country. We introduced, sir, for the people with special needs, a special needs grant, sir, to allow those families, sir, to be able to afford a better standard of living in this country, sir. And we didn't do so because it was a political thing to do, sir. We had the resources to be able to respond and do that for people, sir. And once we have not been able to reduce the VAT as we had promised, sir, we have been incrementally ensuring that ordinary families in this country, sir, can afford to be able to provide for their children and their families, sir. We didn't do this out of no political motive, sir. We responded to the people, sir, as we were able to do so. And therefore, I reject any notion, sir, that this government, that we have not been focused, sir, on the well-being of citizens. And whilst we're talking about VAT, sir, I want to make it clear, sir, that when businesses in this country, and it's not only related to VAT, when businesses in this country, sir, supplying goods and services to the said government, not being paid, sir, not being paid for the goods and services that they were given to government, and then, sir, asking the same businesses, sir, to pay the same VAT under the Democratic Party, sir, to government for services provided to the public, sir, that's wrong. Cause a lot of businesses, sir, hardship in this country. But, sir, we right-size that. We right-size that. And we've been able now to ensure that we can stay current with respect to being able to ensure that VAT refunds are done in a systematic way, sir, so that the government don't disadvantage the business in this country, so that businesses can go and hire more people, sir, to provide more goods and services to the people of this country, sir. That don't come easy, sir. It comes with discipline. So don't, through you, sir, anybody could get up and say they can do this, the next, the third, sir. But none of them, sir, will be able to indicate to you or the public, sir, exactly how they're going to do it. Because if he didn't believe that the economy was growing, if he didn't believe that the work that this government, sir, was sound, if, sir, all the things that we were doing was so bad for the world, how could he get up in here?
The honourable member.
Sorry, how can the honourable member, sir, get up in here and say that a new government can reduce VAT if this government, sir, hadn't already been doing the foundational work to ensure that the economy, sir, is recovering? I am prepared, sir, to have any discussion with any economist that he said he wants to have a discussion on these matters about. But we, sir, have been responsible in relation to these matters. And if that is a consideration for the future, sir, then we will do so. But at the end of the day, until that day happens, I know that the people of this country will know through our records, sir, that we didn't wait until the magical moment to ensure that people could afford to live in this country, sir. We have been doing it every single day, sir, since May 24th, 2018, sir, to ensure that this country is a better place. Every day. every day. And so, with that, sir, I finished with that. I just want to say to the people of this country, sir, to stay focused. Stay focused. Stay focused. Whenever, sir, as we did in January of 2022, sir, as you know, sir, under the Public Finance Management Act, there's a requirement for the Director of Finance and the Minister responsible for Finance, sir, to publish a pre-election report.
And who introduced that?
Introduced by us, by the way, by us in 2019. So before he starts talking about what you're gonna do, sir, I would suggest one, he reads the fiscal framework that's here. Wait until the appropriate time before he starts running off his mouth, sir, with respect to what he thinks he can and cannot do. This country, sir, has been well managed over the course of the last 7.5 years, sir. And we will continue to focus on ensuring that we maintain not just a stable macroeconomic environment, but to ensure that the people of this country, sir, that we can see improved delivery of public goods and public services, and to ensure that the things, sir, that we have absolutely control over, that we do them quickly, we do them swiftly, to ensure that the reforms, sir, can stay the course of time. And so, sir, with those very few words, I beg to move, sir, that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
There's the economic substance. 10.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
Question is that clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do no report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do no report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Please report on the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Companies Economic Substance Repeal Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methink the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 11, sir. Order number 11, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2025.
Honourable Member for Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methink the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair in the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methink the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Thinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable Member Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this bill be read a third time.
Question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 14, sir. He's gonna do 14, 15, and 16. Yes, sir. Order number 14.
Honourable Member Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that orders number 14, 15, and 16 be treated as a cognate debate.
The question is that orders number 14, 15, and 16 be treated as a cognate debate, given the fact that all three are interlinked. The question is that occur. All those members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Member Christian,
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
the question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Member Christian.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Chairman, Clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that Clause 4 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule will be the schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. I member Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the final appropriation 2022 to 23 Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 15, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the final appropriation 2023 to 2024 Bill 2025.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honorable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Speaker, the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committee, report the passing of one bill.
Mr. Speaker, sorry. Mr. Speaker, beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the final appropriation 2023-24 Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Order number 16, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the final appropriation 2024 to 2025 Bill 2025.
Mr. Speaker, just for the record of the House, with the passage of this bill, orders number 4A and 4B will fall off automatically. And with that, sir, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not let the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honorable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair, beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair, beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Chair, beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. All member for Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the final appropriations 2024-25 Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the adjournment of the House until Tuesday, the 25th of November at 10 a.m.
The question is that this honorable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 25th day of November at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 25th of November, 2025 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.